Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Rem and Sam podcast. We'll see how far we make it through on this one because there's a tornado scheduled to roll through here anytime now during this recording. We're hopping on right before the start of Pacers, Celtics. The Eastern Conference Finals is starting. So we've said our prayers for this one. I think we'll be in good shape. I think all the bad weather will skip us, but just in case, if this gets like lost and buried and you're digging this up and you're watching this Eastern Conference Finals 30-24, then Victor Wembanyama the fourth just tearing up the league. Then don't worry, I know Victor Wembanyama, he got the ring. I know I know it all worked out. But anyways, hopefully we make it through tornado free on this one. But like we said, the Pacers are getting ready to play the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. And the Pacers money line was plus 360 for this one going in. So I'm not touching it. So, but I may look like a fool for thinking it's interesting. We'll see what happens. The spread anyways is plus 10. It feels like, I don't know, game one, if ever an underdog is going to be feisty in a series, just besides late in a series when they're fighting for their lives, it would be in game one. So I feel like, there might be some value there. I'm trying to throw a little Halliburton or Siakam points with the money line with the spread parlay, but not quite buying in to them going into Boston and knocking them off game one. And they were saying today that Boston was the biggest favorite in the conference finals since the Durant Steph Golden State team. And I want to say it was probably that 17 team that swept through everybody in the playoffs that year, which, I mean, I get on paper because of you could make the case because of the Eastern Conference. Obviously, it's not the Celtics or that team, but it does feel like that's just a big spread to be opening the playoffs with. And I don't know if that was the number was the exact same. I just heard it in passing on First Take today, but I don't know if that was like the Pacer or the Celtics money line to win the series was the exact same as that Warriors money line. Cause it was like Vegas, just make it like minus 9,000 if it's the same. Just out of respect for the greatness of that Warriors team. Like, can this Celtics team, just in any kind of stats team, have they earned the right to be on paper with that Golden State team? But we'll find out as the game is about to start. Chris Paul is in the studio for ESPN on Countdown right now, breaking down stuff at the board. So, I mean, the Warriors now have two active players on their roster currently on TV in the playoffs. You've got Draymond, obviously, is slowly becoming a staple on TNT and the Turner Sports Network. But Chris Paul in the studio, I don't know if it's looking good for that non-guaranteed $30 million. The deadline on that is about a month away. So the fact that he's like, hey, let's see what else is out there for a career. We'll see if the amount of Chris Paul State Farm commercials starts to rank back up. I don't know. Has State Farm still got him on? Has Caitlin Clark just stolen Chris Paul's shine for the State Farm scene? At least for the basketball scene anyways, because we know the Mahomes, Maotto, Kelsey, they'll all be back around for the football season. But if he averaged 9 points a game, play 26 minutes, is that enough to qualify to be in a State Farm commercial? We'll have to get Jake I wonder if we could get Jake from State Farm on the pod. Probably not, because he's at sideline at all these games. But maybe we might have to be Jake from State Farm. If you're listening to this, be prepared. You will be contacted by the Rem and Sam people. We will be reaching out to see if we can make something happen. But I guess the line they're saying on ESPN's got it at minus 9.5. Should we check BetStamp real quick to see what shout out BetStamp to see what the best spread is for this Pacers Celtics game? This would be a convenient time for the Wi-Fi to cut out while I try to pull this up. It does look like it's moved to 9.5 on a bunch of them. Caesars right now has got it at minus 105. Bet Rivers has got it at minus 109. So like you said, BetStamp is the best place to check the best. It compares all the sports books, and you can see what the best odds are. And most likely, if you're in Iowa, the best odds, they're on DFR Sportsbook. We know what's up with the partners. The links are in the description. But the Western Conference Finals starts, I believe, tomorrow. Or today, if you guys are listening to this when it drops, today would be Wednesday. So yeah, the Western Conference Finals would start Wednesday. And I just pulled it up and I'm looking at it right now. Just seeing Mavs Timberwolves as the matchup is a little, me and Sam both picked the Timberwolves. And I think we both said that we picked them to win game 7. But I think in classic Rem and Sam fashion, we like kind of picked it right and was somehow totally wrong about how it was going to happen. Because I was totally set on they haven't stopped Ant for the entire series. It's if Ant just goes off and they're not able to stop him and he's able to pull out the win, then I wouldn't be shocked at all. But it was really like, Karl Towns had a great game, Gobert defensively, and then Naz Reid in the fourth quarter just stepping in. And I was watching the game with my brother. I mean, Naz Reid is like his favorite player in the league now. He's like, Naz Reid must be just like a top 15 guy all of a sudden. And he was outstanding in the fourth for the Timberwolves. So and Edwards I didn't look and see how that shooting performance compares to some other ones in a playoff win, but for the Timberwolves team to emerge victorious despite that Anthony Edwards stat line is still pretty impressive. And I know Anthony Edwards still played a really good game, and the defense that he played on Murray in the fourth quarter was that more impressive than anything he did offensively in the game? Because, like we said, offensively, he was unstoppable. He put up a couple of 40-point games on this team. And just the way that he was able to lock down Murray, where, McDaniels just announced today that he was on first team all defense. I think we get it. He was regarded as one of the better defenders in the league. But just the level of locked in that Anthony Edwards was, where he just totally took Jamal Murray out, was pretty impressive. Because even in that game, Murray was hitting shots where it was like, okay, this is going to be an old school Jokic, Murray, just put the team on their back. They're doing their 2-man game. They're going to get the victory. And again, just Anthony Edwards just totally changed that. And Murray has had his moments obviously he's had his games, but the games that they've lost, I'm sure you could look at the Murray shooting numbers and be like, okay, that's probably the prime reason. Porter as well too. I know his numbers weren't great down the end of the series, but again, just to start that game, it seemed like, okay, yeah, Murray is in his bag. They can't stop him. And Edwards stepped up, took the challenge. So to contribute that way, and then to have Naz Reid just on the other side, basically making up for all the shot making stuff that Anthony Edwards would give, as long as you're getting the points from anywhere, it doesn't really matter where they're coming from. So if you're getting them from Naz Reid, corner threes, the rebounding in the fourth quarter was the other thing too that was really surprising. Because, and we were saying this on the Friday pod, but just if inevitably that if the Timberwolves had won this series, the looking back on it and looking at the games and looking at the box scores and being like, the Timberwolves were kind of the dominant team. They had massive wins on the road. They went into Denver several times, got massive wins, and then was able to go in there in a game 7 and pull out the victory. And I didn't expect one to go into the series and then by the end of the series be like, yeah, the Timberwolves are actually the better basketball team. And if the Nuggets are able to win this, it is going to be on the greatness of the 2-man game of Jokic and Murray. But there was also moments throughout the playoffs, but definitely in the series, especially in those blowout wins for the Timberwolves, where, the Nuggets had proven that, and the Timberwolves, again, very worthy opponent. This game was close till the very end. So it's hard to sit here and super criticize the Nuggets. Cause this is like these might be the 2 best teams in the league in this playoff series, but it did feel like there was just the level of competitiveness that the Timberwolves were able to get to was a little bit higher. And the Nuggets were always that team where last year on their title run and then this year kind of defending their title run, it seemed like when they had the on switch, they still had that highest, not just like obviously basketball play, but just the mental locked in. We're doing everything right. We're going to make every single right play defensive, and again, offensively, it's going to be a lot of the two-man game with Murray and Jokic making up for a lot of that stuff. But it's like anytime we need a big three from KCP, he's going to knock it down. Anytime we need a big three from Porter, he's going to knock it down. Murray or Gordon's going to make all the hustle plays that we need. And there were just times in this fourth quarter where Gordon wasn't really boxing out. When KCP is missing threes, I know because Porter, and we might have to talk about Porter more with Sam on this weekend. And I know, nobody's thrown Michael Porter into more fake trades than us. No disrespect to Michael Porter. Shout out. We're fans. That's why we're trying to get you. We're honestly just trying to get you more shots, Michael Porter. But this is multiple playoff runs where Michael Malone has felt the need to experiment with his lineup in that spot. And the fact that they were successful last year without having Porter on the court and getting away with the Bruce Brown minutes. And, KCP was able to make up for a lot of the perimeter 3-point shooting stuff. And then defensively, he's hovers in that all defensive range as well, too. I don't remember seeing if he got votes this year. Someone voted on all defensive teams for Podziemski. And then there was one other guy that got I was like a little surprised that they got a vote as well, too. Shout out to Podziemski. Podziemski definitely hustles, but one of the 10 best defenders in the league seems definitely like you're viewing the. Is that I don't know. I feel like we have to vote. Is that a vote for potential or a vote for where you actually think he's at right now? But again, no disrespect to Podziemski, but there was one other guy too. Man, we don't need to call out the guy that got the surprising All NBA vote, All Defensive vote. But KCP hovers in that range, and when he was missing a three in the fourth quarter, I was like, okay, the Nuggets are probably not going to get this. And then when Gobert hits the insane three over Jokic, and then Jokic just throws up his hands afterwards and is like, there's nothing we can do about that. Sam was sending me the clip right after the game, and we were talking. Yeah, we were like, yeah, that's the moment where we definitely were like, yeah, the Nuggets thing is over for this season. But just in those games where, the Timberwolves were able to pull away. I mean, the 40-point game, it's like, okay, again, the Nuggets do have that on-off switch, and the fact that they don't really have a bench when the starters kind of tap out and they go to their secondary guys, the score can maybe get out of hand a little bit more than you'd expect. But there was just some locked-in stuff from this fourth quarter that, honestly, if they get a couple more rebounds and they clean up some of that stuff, it's like they're probably moving on and facing the Mavericks. And, whoever wins this series, it feels like, the Celtics they're, favored here to crush the Pacers. We'll see. The Mavericks are going to be Luka, Kyrie. You definitely can't underestimate them as well, too. It's just the level that we saw these teams playing against each other. So I mean, the Naz Reid thing and the Timberwolves, again, I thought they were the better team, definitely impressive, but it did feel like the Nuggets left a little bit on the table. And I know Malone as well, too, in game one, just right away, or maybe not game one, but game two, when they just had gotten swept at home to start the series, they had to go back to Minnesota. Things were looking really bad. And Malone was just kind of like, there wasn't even like play type stuff or matchup type stuff that he was like, oh, this is stuff we're going to look at. It was just, I mean, are you guys, how bad do you want it? Like, are you champions? Do you want to go back and get it a second time? Like, he was kind of challenging them in that way. And in this fourth quarter, I mean, you kind of could see that a little bit. And the Timberwolves just were definitely a bit more locked in. And it was, I mean, incredible to watch. And the fact now that we're in this position for a Final Four where we're guaranteed a new champion, like a new lead guy, finals MVP. I guess, is there any guy that could repeat as the finals MVP? Probably not, because I think there's only been, I mean, we'll go through it, but a couple of guys that have won the title. But we're going to get a new champion this year. But the fact that we don't just have a new champion, but we're already, not already, but we're in the Final Four, and we're already at the fact where we could get a new champion. Because I think, like, just off the top of my head, going back here, I'll pull up the seasons and go look through it quick. But just looking at the teams that have won it, where, I mean, you've got new ones like Giannis, and I know that Giannis Sun series would have been a new champion year. But I don't remember who it was in the conference championship that year. But when Steph won his finals MVP, I mean, Tatum could have won his first, but again, Steph had already won the finals. his first finals MVP. The conference, oh, that's right, because it was Trae Young in the conference finals. And then the Clippers I think they were pretty banged up at that point. And I think injuries, I think that Suns team was definitely good. They were a 60-win regular season team, so deserving of making a deep playoff run. But there was definitely some favorable injuries, kind of like this Boston team as well, too. I didn't think about that, but the last time we got there, looking back at it now, the last time that we had these 4 new teams, because I guess it would have been the 2021, yeah, just a couple seasons ago, but the team that was the dominant regular season team, got the favorable path in the playoffs, was Phoenix, and lost in the finals. So again, we'll see if Boston is actually able to close out the Pacers. And I know Sam was very, very confident as well too. I'm not gonna like bet the Pacers to win or anything. I just, I like keeping an open mind. And I just when people are like, oh, I'm so surprised, it's like, yeah, it is basketball. Like, things do happen. But I think the Celtics are in good shape. But the fact that we're in this position to have a new champion this early, definitely not too common anyways. Maybe I don't want to go back too far in history and start disproving my point. But I was thinking more about what this game spoke more to. Like, what was the bigger, what did this game mean? Not just like more for, but what did this game speak? Like what caused this game, like the outside factors, not just necessarily the on-court stuff. Because I mean, for one, you've got Minnesota, where, I mean, Tim Conley now, and it's been well documented as when the series had started, and it seemed like the Timberwolves were just going to kind of cruise to a victory there for a while, and the Nuggets were able to fight back, and then, like we know, get into Game 7. But Conley building up the Nuggets and then building the team that ends up beating the Nuggets, and gets Jokic, Murray, Porter Jr., and Gordon. The only move he doesn't really do for the Nuggets that you could argue pushes them over the title was sign Bruce Brown. But they signed Bruce Brown this summer that he left. And the guy that they became the general manager was the assistant general manager under Tim Connolly, Calvin Booth, who is still the general manager there. And they drafted Christian Braun as well, too, in the draft that year. He did play a big role for him in the playoffs last year with his energy. And to be honest, his defense against Anthony Edwards was pretty effective in these playoffs. They couldn't really contain him, but that was the best thing that they had going. And like we're saying, if Gordon and some of the other stuff is able to lock in from some other factors, I don't know if well, I guess I don't want to start contradicting myself, because like I said, they couldn't stop Edwards, but I think, at least, okay, Christian Braun is going to give us good energy, and he's going to run around and put up a fight against him. But outside of that, I mean, constructed the core of that Denver team. And then I was going back and looking at the trades again that he made for this Timberwolves team. And the Gobert trade, he gave up a ton of picks to get Gobert, and, some swaps in there. So they'll get a pick. It just might not necessarily be the best one. I get, he gave up control of a lot of picks. I get it. But the players that he gave up to get Gobert, it was Malik Beasley, Pat Bev, Jared Vanderbilt, and then Walker Kessler, who they had just drafted. And they've now selected one of the picks that they've traded, and that pick was Keontae George. So, Walker Kessler, Keontae George, 2 nice young pieces. But I mean, Connolly was clearly like building a title team right away around Edwards, and you're not going to win the title with Walker Kessler and Keontae George. That's just obvious. And the role guys, nice role guys like Beasley, Vanderbilt, Papa, like all those guys have contributed as they've inevitably bounced around. But to go outside of the control the picks and maybe what that does for you from other leverage things. But I mean, again, I think that Gobert thing is not as bad looking back at it as, and I think in the moment, me and Sam were pretty friendly for that trade, though we did say that, they definitely gave up a lot of pieces, but definitely okay, the players that they gave up, definitely much more of a win than you would think. And then the Connolly trade, which also involves the Jazz, but they make it the deadline with the Lakers. It's the Westbrook Lakers trade, and the Lakers ended up getting Russell, Beasley and Vanderbilt. So Beasley and Vanderbilt were on the Jazz from the Timberwolves at that point. Russell was still on the Timberwolves. All three of those guys end up in LA. And then Westbrook, Damian Jones, Juan Toscano Anderson, and the 27 first and maybe another pick or two end up in the Jazz. And then the Timberwolves get Connolly, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and then a couple of second round picks. But Connolly and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, like Alexander Walker was a big bench piece for him. He's been a big bench piece for him in this playoff run. And then we know Conley's importance as just a point guard, a guy that can run the offense. And, you know, to be honest, like if he's out there for one of those games where he's hurt, like maybe this series doesn't even end up going to 7 because they lost the game that he was injured. But again, a huge win for that team. And we'll talk about Donovan Mitchell because there's Donovan Mitchell rumblings going on in the news right now as the cap season is over and as the offseason approaches. But I mean, come on, Donovan Mitchell. Anthony Edwards is winning with your team, bro. Like he's got Mike Conley, he's got Rudy Gobert. These are, and the fact that he's taken the Jazz core to the Western Conference Finals, where I don't think there was maybe a semis run in there for Mitchell, but now they're actually on the precipice. And I guess, should we see if they're actually favored to win the finals at this point? I would assume it's still Boston because they're going to have home court as well, too, at the best regular season record. Boston minus 150, Minnesota plus 270. 2-1. Not bad at this point, but I mean, second odds. I mean, the fact that he's got this team this close with Donovan Mitchell's core, and Donovan Mitchell, to be fair, didn't have Naz Reid or, Nikki. He didn't have the exact same team, but pretty similar core. Karl Anthony Towns as well, too, which, I mean, couldn't be more impressed with Towns stock. And like we said on Friday, like Towns was going to have a big game. The defensive stuff that he was doing on Jokic was impressive, but just they needed that secondary offensive piece. And Naz Reid was definitely able to provide it for him in the fourth quarter. But in the Karl Anthony Towns played a good game in Game 7, and then when he subbed back in for Gobert, definitely held up when they were able to make the run. But I mean, obviously Denver being the better team, like we said, I think this series definitely spoke to that. And in a sense, it also on the other side speaks to where Denver going into the playoffs and throughout the course of the year, like it was like, okay, they have Jokic, the best player, but also just the pieces that they've been able to put around him, the way everything fits together. This is their 5 guys is still the best 5 combination that we have in the league. And again, after watching this game, like I guess the one thing with the Timberwolves would be the Naz Reid, Karl Towns, Gobert factor, where they definitely have played all 3 of those guys together. But I don't know if that's something you could do all the time. If Naz Reid is playing offensively like he is, and he's just hitting threes and doing all this stuff, like I guess there is no reason that you couldn't play all 3 of those guys together. I get, the side, because the Gordon matchup helps the Nuggets in that factor because of some of the spacing stuff. And Jokic, like you need to have extra size out there so that, that matchup is favorable for those 3 guys. So maybe it's not the Minnesota combination of 5 is outright better than the Denver combination of 5, but Minnesota definitely has more depth. And again, where we were like that, not just that 5 is the best combination of 5, but it was still enough to win the title. And then, I mean, clearly they're going to need to go retool and add something in the offseason because, we'll talk about it on Friday, but the Timberwolves will be facing their own sort of offseason stuff. But, I mean, Murray's going to have a contract extension approaching soon. KCP is a free agent as next, the season after next as well. So they have him on the books for one more year. And again, he's been a very, very crucial part to that team's success, especially in the playoffs. So, I mean, this team has a window here to win the title, but they're going to need to add to it. They're going to need to get stronger. And this is definitely a matchup that is a problem for them. And I think kind of like where the Lakers are at right now. And the Lakers as a whole are definitely a little farther back. I mean, just in seeding, they were a play-in team, but it's like, okay, we feel kind of confident about it with the rest of the team. But just this Denver thing is just this one looming thing that they can't get past. And again, I don't think the Minnesota thing is that bad. I mean, they were in 7 games. Denver was sweeping the Lakers. But I mean, the Minnesota thing now is like a real, okay, this matchup is a big problem for it because, to be honest, the seeds were there in the regular season and they didn't have Karl Towns for several of those matchups. The Nuggets didn't have guys. They didn't have Murray for a couple of matchups. Neither team were really healthy. But the one game where it was like, okay, they had most of their pieces, Minnesota was able to win. And the game where they didn't have, I want to say they didn't have Karl Towns or Gobert out there, was just Anthony Edwards. And the Nuggets were able to get like a sizable lead. And then the Timberwolves, if I remember correctly, worked back in the second half, have a crazy fourth quarter. And then Edwards was like almost able to pull him back in the game and win it. And that was watching that game, watching what Edwards was able to do to him in that game, in that regular season game, without Gobert and Karl Towns out there. So it's like, okay, just offensively, what that is going to give you against a matchup with size like the size that the Nuggets do have, but defensively as well too, where you're just not going to get stops at the same level. But the Timberwolves were still able to climb back, be competitive, and I think I remember going back and watching that game before the series and just like in the deep regions of your heart. Pause. But just like the deep subconscious, you're like, okay, this is probably not a good sign. And then the fact that they won that big regular season matchup, it's like, okay, the evidence was definitely there for this to happen. But like I said, it speaks to Minnesota, it speaks to Denver, but it kind of also, I think, speaks to the state of the league as well too, because I mean, like we said, this matchup, maybe these are the 2 best teams in the league, 2 of the 3 best teams in the league, if we're still giving this, and we are still giving the Celtics their due respect. But I feel that Sam's not here to defend his guy Tatum, but I don't even know why he's defending. The Celtics are probably going to win tonight, and I don't feel like I'm hyping him up enough. But I guess you gotta lay the smack down a little bit more against the other teams. Pause. But I think it does speak to where the league is at from a talent standpoint. The fact that we've now had, again, a super talented matchup, but the defending champion has not made it past the second round. I want to say 5 years, but I want to say this is now the 6th season in a row or maybe this would have been the 5th season, but 5 or 6 years in a row now that the defending champion has not made it past the second round in the playoffs. And I was going back and looking at one-time champions because, again, the Denver thing, I think the starting 5 is still in a good spot. It's more the pieces behind it, maybe some more versatility, and just to say like, hey, let's be able to have some more different looks. Like, let's be able to compete against this Timberwolves team. So I'm not saying their window is closed here, but they do only have one ring. So just going through and seeing where they could be if this is where the historic thing would have stopped with Jokic. Because again, like we said on the Friday pod, but I think a lot of what we were saying with Jokic was like, okay, it seems like they're gonna not cruise to a second ring this year, but they did seem like the big bad enemy that was just going to be really, really hard for anybody to take down. And there was kind of this pseudo second ring, another, finals MVP. He's got the 3rd MVP as well there too. Like, it was just kind of subconsciously, I think, factored into a lot of the Jokic conversation. But if just like one ring was kind of what it were to end up being, what we have for right now, like, what does that look like with some other teams? And to be honest, you kind of know that, like, okay, only a couple of guys dominated at a time. But once you go back and look through it, it is kind of shocking because this will be, I was looking since the merger, the 48th title season since the merger, the NBA ABA merger. And if you go kind of like best player ish on each team, you got MJ obviously accounts for 6, the Kareem and Magic combo 5, Duncan's 5, LeBron's 4, Bird's 3, Steph is 4. Got to scroll over a little farther, but on the dock. But Isaiah Thomas is 2, Hakeem's 2. You've got Shaq with his 3, and then Kobe wins 2. And Shaq as well was also on that '06 Heat team, which had Wade, which was on, the LeBron Miami team. So there's some combination over there. But basically 37 of the 48 titles have like a big like main guy overlap on the team. And again, like all the main guys I just mentioned, and then the kind of the ones that you would question a little bit, but the '06 Heat, where that combo of Wade and Shaq only won one title together. But again, both those guys were multiple title winning guys on other versions of other teams. So like clearly, the champion, multiple champion level guys, just they only got one run as a duo together. And then if you're looking just since the merger and just counting up those teams, those 48 teams, you would, the 76 Celtics, so that's Havlicek and Dave Cowens, that core only won one title together since the merger, but they won one title together before the merger. So they count as a multi-time champion as well too. But again, basically a few guys like kind of collect all of these rings, and the real like true one-off champions are so late 70s, right after the merger, you've got 77 Blazers with Bill Walton, which even that one's a little sketchy because, I mean, they were like right away the next season really good, and Walton gets hurt, and then he goes to Boston and plays with Bird and all those guys and wins another title as well too. And he's not the main guy, so it's not like the Shaq thing in Miami quite, but I still think Bill Walton could get that kind of respect as a multi-champion guy. But anyway, like that Blazers team only won one title together. You've got the Bullets in 78 and the Sonics in 79, but both of those teams played each other in back-to-back years. So back-to-back finals appearances for both those teams. And they split in 78 and 79. The 83 Sixers with Moses Malone. The 04 Pistons with Chauncey Billups and the Wallace twins, and they were able to take down the Kobe team. So you go 83 to 04. That entire stretch is basically Magic and Bird and MJ and Duncan and Shaq and LeBron. It's like those like seven guys, Kobe as well too. And then, Matt, a couple others sprinkled in there, but like those handful of guys dominate the league for that incredible amount of time. And then the '08 Celtics win one title. That core wins one title together. Multiple finals appearances though. The 2011 Mavericks were they were actually like a real one-off team. One finals appearance. With that core, they trade Tyson Chandler the next season, but were able to win in 11. And then in the recent history where you haven't had the champion go past the second round, but we've had some repeat guys. So like LeBron and the Lakers, new team, but LeBron obviously a champion guy. And then the Warriors were able to bounce back after not making, did they not make the playoffs the season before? And then they won the title the season after, something pretty close to that. But you got the 19 Raptors, the 21 Bucks, and then now the 23 Nuggets are, pending because like we said, and, the Bucks are still, I guess, pending as well. Well, not really, because Drew Holiday is traded. So that core is done too. I guess technically the Giannis thing in Milwaukee, if we're just like, if we're just looking back saying that the Giannis historic run, if he's able to stretch this run out in Milwaukee, but, pending the next couple of years, right now, the Nuggets have a spot in this group of teams. So to see it happen this consistently, again, you go all the way from 83 to 04, where you just a handful of guys just are repeating constantly. 08, 11 sprinkled in there. But outside of that, right post-merger couple of years, we haven't seen this kind of turnover from the champions and from like the constant deep playoff teams. And again, I think even just the turnover like in the Final Four this year is pretty crazy because, like even the Bullets and the Sonics each won one title, but were playing each other. And a lot of these teams were making conference finals runs and finals runs year after year. I mean, the Sixers made finals 2 out of 3 years. That '04 Pistons teams that won the finals, they made the conference finals 6 straight seasons. So they were like, competitive. It's not like they were, the Mavs were, again, like a little, like had definitely the spike in the year, but a lot of these teams were constantly making deep playoff runs. So it hasn't been since that post-merger stretch where we've seen this kind of turnover. And I was going back and looking at shout out to Simmons, but I was going back and reading his book about where the state of the league was at post-merger. And he was like talking about, you get the expansion at that point, but it doesn't there's not enough expansion to keep up with the talent in the league. So the saturation of talent in the league was probably, I don't want to say it an all-time high because you get in the 90s and it's like there's just a ton of studs, but just the amount of talent spread out throughout the league was like really incredible post-merger. And we are kind of seeing that again. And, it's been in a different way where it's just been through the drafts and the international stuff and just, the talent pool and the ability to find these guys and bring them in, develop talent, like that has been expanding. It's not like we're just adding more teams from other leagues in that way, but, the saturation of talent, I think, is really similar. So again, I think this series speaks to the league in that sort of way where I do think the Nuggets are going to have to retool. I do think the Timberwolves are a favorable matchup if these teams look the same heading into next year. I mean, obviously that'd be the case. They just beat them, but another year, if you get, again, maybe some hustle plays from Jokic, I'm just saying you can play that series out and I think you could still walk away with several versions of it with the Nuggets winning. But, I think all those things hold true about the teams. But I do think it also, like we're saying, and we talked about on this pod a bunch of times, speaks to the depth of talent in the league. And the fact that we're just seeing this now constantly, is this just the league now? Or the other case is, like we're saying, you get post 70s, like the league was still talented and the league continued to expand and add teams. But, 79 would have been, like we're saying, that last where you get the three teams in a row right after the merger with the Blazers, the Sonics, Blazers, Bullets, Sonics. But that 79 draft, that would have been magic. And then you got Bird entering the league a couple years later. You've got Jordan in the 84 draft, which would have been right after that Sixers season. I mean, you've got LeBron in the 03 draft, which would have been right after that Pistons season. So, I mean, this could be the league now. Or was this the league, or were we just in that stretch where we were in the early 70s post turnover? And are we going to enter a stretch now where, like we've been saying, this is a changing of the guard? And are we seeing these full stars emerge? Because we kind of just talked about this on Friday with Tatum, but the Celtics have been in their title window. They've been making these conference finals runs, and maybe this is the year where they're able to break through. Maybe Tatum is the guy where of the young guys, it's like, okay, he got to it first. That makes sense. He's been doing the playoff thing a little bit longer than Shea and Doncic. Doncic has been competitive as well too with his teams, but Anthony Edwards in like his first real playoff run. Same with Halliburton. But I'm just going to be curious, like, is this the league going forward, or was this the league for that stretch? Because the way the salary cap is set up, you could definitely see that being the case where, okay, yeah, maybe just the way team building is now and the player movement's going to be harder and the stars and the way you have to, like, maybe dynasty era is over. I know they've been talking about that on First Take. Maybe it just doesn't exist anymore. Or maybe the next generation of guys, this is it. And maybe Edwards is going to be the guy that actually, like we're saying, has his hands or, has a chokehold on the league pause for the next however many years he's able to make his run, and, whatever other young guys are able to emerge behind him. I think we still have stock in all these young guys as you can build title teams around them. But I mean, the Edwards thing is definitely real. And don't worry, I mean, we know that I've got stock in certain other young players, rookie players, but I just, to do this in the playoffs is incredible. Again, with the help of the supporting cast is crucial, but that type of thing is crucial when, you're talking about winning the finals. Like Anthony Edwards in this playoff series clearly did everything he needed to do to be like, he is a talent, not just like a face of the league talent, but talent that you can build and win a title team around. a rise to the occasion guy more so. Because again, it's like guys do have the talent, but it's like, okay, we want to see you constantly like rise to the occasion. And there are going to be times where, LeBron is going to rise to the occasion in game 1 of the 2018 finals. And there's going to be other circumstances that, the team surrounding him. There's going to be other circumstances that might mitigate that. But we want to see you rise to the occasion. Like we're saying, even though Edwards didn't show up offensively in this game 1, I think he still doing it defensively and rising to the occasion in various other ways. I mean, he definitely checked all those boxes. And it's like, okay, if the Timberwolves are going to take that next step and win the title, they're going to need the supporting cast to step up and make certain plays and win certain games. I mean, we saw the Nuggets team have to do it for him. Jokic was incredible in the playoff run last year. And, they got like Jimmy Butler in the final, maybe they got some favorable matchups as well too, but Bruce Brown had big moments for this team where in fourth quarters, it was like, not necessarily relying on Bruce Brown, but making winning plays. And this, Naz Reid was doing it at the peaks that we've seen it for, guys that are considered role players. But you need that thing if you're going to win the title. So it's like, yeah, Edwards checked the box and the Timberwolves checked the box for the immediate thing this season as, yeah, they can win the title. So the sirens have just started to go off. I started to hear him a second ago faint in the background. And I was like, is that actually the sirens or is that just the fan that I've got going in the back and I'm tweaking? But it is actually the sirens. Can we get a live weather check? No rain. This is a window. If you're watching this is just a window right behind the camera. It not that if you're watching this, you can see it, but I guess you could get a more of a build it up in your imagination anyways. Yeah, it's not raining yet, but there was not necessarily a rain warning. It was more of a tornado warning than a rain warning. And I don't, not necessarily tornadoes, but a couple of years ago, we got a derecho. I guess it's kind of just like a loose tornado. It's just a lot of wind. So tornado, it's, all funnel. It's spinning around. You get the whole twister thing going on. A derecho is just like a bunch of wind just blowing through, pause, messing everything up. So we got that a couple of years ago, ripping through Iowa. And, definitely did a lot of damage. And I think that's what, more than just like a tornado specifically, that's what the warnings, that's what the people were kind of, word on the street was, that's what the people were nervous about. So if a branch just comes flying through the window, that would not be good. But so far, so good. Yeah, it doesn't look like it doesn't look like there's too much chaos outside at this point. So I think we can power through. But like I think we mentioned earlier, but I did want to talk about Donovan Mitchell quickly because the rumors have started to heat up. The trade mill, and it's not even just a Mitchell thing too with the Cavs. The rumors for a second there were, so I don't even know what the timeline of events is exactly, but the rumors that I was seeing was, yes, Mitchell, there was contract extension talks with Cleveland. Maybe that's just, sign and trade type stuff, but also trade rumors for Mitchell. But in conjunction to the Mitchell extension rumors, there was Darius Garland trade rumors where the report that I was seeing was Rich Paul was like, hey, if you guys are going to choose, like it would actually have to be, this offseason is going to have to be basically a choice for the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's kind of what Rich Paul was saying, where if you sign Donovan Mitchell to an extension and he is actually happy in Cleveland, another thing that he has apparently been quoted as saying on Instagram is he is happy in Cleveland. But if apparently that's true and Cleveland wants to build their team around him, then they're going to have to move Garland. Rich Paul's like, hey, we want to make our own thing. Now, the fact that it's Rich Paul, it's like, okay, flashing lights, Rich Paul, LeBron James, LA, that team is going to need to make a move this offseason in some capacity. And is there like a Darius Garland to LA type thing? And I don't even know if that's specifically what's there to look out for, but you've always in the offseason have to look out for the clutch sport guy that's going to step up and help LeBron. He's had it in the past. KCP was the clutch sports guy in LA, was able to go through and help win a title there. Obviously they traded for Anthony Davis, but Darius Garland, Rich Paul, also a Clutch Sports guy. If they're able to force a trade out of Cleveland, I'm sure at this point, Dan Gilbert's like, I'm just done. We're never drafting a guy that signs with Clutch Sports ever again. We're not dealing with LeBron ever. But because I think the other report that I saw too today, now that thinking about it, I saw this on First Things First on the TV. So it's hard to call it a report. I saw it at work, just like walking out of work. So it's hard to call this a report. But apparently the Cavs and the Bulls aren't willing to trade with the Lakers. But yeah, like Dan Gilbert's just like, I've got to be done with LeBron and all of the people with him at this point. But I'm not saying I'm signing with Gilbert. I'm just saying that's probably what he's thinking. But I was going through and looking at the Clutch Sports guys. So I put them in tiers quickly, just like to see who is gettable for LA as we head into the offseason. So, LA's already got Davis and LeBron. So they're set with the core, the Clutch Sports core for the Lakers. The guys that they probably wouldn't be able to get would be Maxey, De'Aaron Fox, Aaron Gordon, and KCP. So, Aaron Gordon and KCP, a different tier of player than Maxey and Fox. But I don't know if the Lakers could offer the Nuggets anything that could. Maybe if there was like some incredible KCP overpay, I don't know what that would be, but I don't think. Maybe same with Gordon as well too. If there's an overpay for anybody, they'll make a move. But I don't think realistically the Nuggets would move on from those guys with a Lakers package. But the other guys, just to keep an eye out, the Clutch Sports guys, to keep an eye out, which of these guys might stumble onto the Lakers this offseason. So Garland, obviously, we know the Cavs are not willing to make a move with the Lakers, but we know Rich Paul's agent. We know, like we said, according to Bleacher Report notifications and Instagram, there are rumblings that he is unhappy in Cleveland if they re-sign Donovan Mitchell. Fred VanVleet in Houston. Speaking of Mitchell, there's some Houston Mitchell stuff that's starting to heat up. But VanVleet, do we have to keep an eye on? Keldon Johnson in San Antonio. Again, I don't know what the Lakers, I don't know if they have any timeline specific stuff outside of maybe if there's I don't know if the Reeves thing. I'm saying too much, but Zach LaVine, Clutch Sports guy. They probably would have made a move for LaVine already if they wanted him, but I guess, if there's some free agency shenanigans they're able to work, who knows? DeJounte Murray, Clutch Sports guy, but Trae Young is also a Clutch Sports guy. So they have both of the Atlanta guys, and then Jordan Clarkson, Gary Trent Jr. Now I don't know how much we're moving the needle with some of these other guys, but a handful of guys. Oh, Miles Bridges as well too. On looking on the Wikipedia page for Clutch Sports agents, Miles Bridges is so if they want to take a shot on a guy, I shouldn't say take a shot around Miles Bridges, but if they want to take a chance on a guy, younger player, maybe they're able to get him at a bargain. Maybe that's an upside type move. They already tried it with Cam Reddish, but the Garland thing would be interesting if there was a Garland Reeves package, and maybe I don't know if you would have to throw a pick into a Garland Reeves thing, because to be honest, Reeves might just have a better playoff resume than Garland. Last year Reeves was big in the playoffs for the Lakers, but also a number 3 option versus Garland, a number 2. Sometime, when Mitchell's out, he's been a number 1. So a little bit different circumstances. But again, I don't know. I don't think Rich Paul is like specifically forcing his hand to LA. Maybe it is just, let's get Garland a different opportunity. Again, I probably don't know if LeBron and Clutch Sports is super fond of having guys in Cleveland at this point. Maybe everybody just wants to cut ties with that relationship. So maybe that's just the mitigating thing in general. But I would, Garland, I don't know if they're going to be like seeking other offers from other teams if Garland's on the table. But Mitchell, like I said, the Houston thing is starting to heat up a little bit. And I went to the trade machine I went to a trade probably about a week ago as the initial Donovan trade rumors started to heat up. And at that point, the first team that started to do, I mean, LA, like we said, it emerged as a Donovan Mitchell team, as a team that was going to be interested in Donovan Mitchell. And the Miami Heat as well, too. Their name was popping up as another team that was interested. So I was looking on the trade machine at those two teams specifically, but the other team that I was looking at was Houston, just because that team is a really asset heavy team. And if you're Cleveland and you're just thinking, best interest of the team, obviously, that could be a really favorable team to make a trade with. And in Houston, Texas, it's not like a bad city. I think Mitchell is maybe a little happier in Cleveland than we think. I know Sam's been pretty set on Mitchell is leaving, and I'm not saying he's wrong there, but I think Sam has kind of been on the, I guess I shouldn't speak for Sam when he's not here, but I'm projecting on Sam. But I've always kind of thought that Donovan Mitchell wasn't super happy just living in Cleveland. I don't know if the satisfactory ranking on Cleveland as a lifestyle city for these NBA players ranked super high. So I think Houston is an upgrade in that sense for Donovan Mitchell. I don't think you're necessarily like trading him to, Charlotte, or do the Dame Lillard, put him in Milwaukee with just nothing to do and it snows in the winter and Dame Lillard's just bummed out he has to sit in his hotel room. But I guess the thing is too, and the off-court stuff aside, but if you're living in a hotel room, that is also probably another reason contributing to his depression. But I did have that Houston team pinned as a Donovan Mitchell thing, but it is also an interesting team to make a trade with, because if I'm making a trade with Houston, I mean, like Sengun is there, like, could you go Mitchell's first, Sengun? Okay. Houston's probably doing that trade to build around Sengun. I think he's the centerpiece there. Me and Sam are super high on Cam Whitmore. So if you're able to just work him into a pack, work him in somehow, I would, again, if I'm making this trade, I just would like to have Cam Whitmore as a piece. But I would also really like to have Jabari Smith. And that's another guy where, and if we're just naming all the young guys that they could trade on the Rockets, the other guy would be Jalen Green. So if it's like, okay, who's going to be the centerpiece of this trade? Jabari Smith or Jalen Green? I think Jabari Smith is, one, just an easier fit next to Mitchell as a wing, the defense, the shooting, versus Green needs the ball. Like, I mean, that makes a ton of sense. But I think, again, that goes for, I think Cleveland's going to view the same thing. And if they're choosing between Garland and Mitchell, they're still, going to be having Garland as a guard. They need a wing in general, too. That's not really a position they have. You get Jabari Smith in that spot. I think defensively, the size there with him and Mobley, you flip Allen and whatever kind of pieces you're able to get back for that. Like, Smith is going to fit well, and he's a versatile guy. He's going to fit well on a lot of teams. So again, I would really like to get Jabari Smith in a trade if I'm looking at Houston. But I do think Jalen Green would be a really interesting piece. And if you're just thinking, cheaper Donovan Mitchell, and I think, the Donovan Mitchell playoff stuff, the game that he won was, the scoring, it was a special performance. I think some of the fourth quarters, even against the Magic, he really started to show a little bit of that playoff stuff where if he can, the usage stuff, if he can get that to fit with somebody, it could be really special. And I don't know if Jalen Green can get to that level, but the contract thing, the age, just, the asset, you're going to get some picks in there. I think that is if Jalen Green is a centerpiece of a Mitchell package, I think, again, with what Jalen Green showed in the regular season, that is a really good trade piece. And maybe with the peaks that he showed in the regular season, maybe Houston is like, well, we don't want to give up on this guy. So maybe actually Jabari Smith might be the easier guy to get. So I don't know if, just Jabari ending up on Cleveland and everybody's happy all the way around, but they also have, a bunch of the Brooklyn picks as well, too, from the Harden trade. The Brooklyn pick is the number 3 pick in the draft for him this year. So the number 3 pick is definitely on the table as well. I know Sam is not liking the draft. The experts, and nobody's liking the draft, but the number 3 pick is control of the board. So if you're trading for control of the board, I think teams definitely do desire that. And you also probably have to throw Steven Adams in the trade to make the contracts work. Maybe Tari Eason as well, too. If you could get like Tari Eason, if you could somehow do like Jabari Smith, Cam Whitmore, a pick or two or whatever. The picks thing, I don't really know how to gauge in trades right now. I'm going to need to see a trade go down this offseason to see where the pick markets are at, because I do feel like teams have my gut tells me teams just everybody's kind of unofficially reset it after that Gobert thing. Because again, you go look at the Gobert thing and like the Paul George trade, just like, what did these teams do? Like they're giving up like a decade's worth of picks. And I know this Phoenix has made like multiple trades. They don't have any of their picks for a while. And, you know, again, like if you're Minnesota, you might win the title this year. So that trade is going to be a good trade. But just the ability to pull off a trade when it's like the starting point is like, well, the Gobert thing got 5 first-round picks, and then obviously inflation's going to happen. It's like, oh, well, now do I have to give you 9 first-round picks for a guy that's better than, you know, Gobert's an all-defensive guy, but he's not like an all-NBA guy. If I'm trading for whatever, you know, it's just like, what happens to inflation at that point? So I do think it's cut back a little bit, but I don't know how much it's cut back. So that's something we'll have to gauge with Sam. We could do, you know, full Donovan Mitchell Cavs trade machine with Sam and with maybe a guest this weekend too. I don't want to tease too much, but but maybe a special guest appearance. But like if you could do like Jabari Smith, Cam Whitmore, whatever picks you need, you know, the Steven Adams contract, if you need, I think he's still on the team, but maybe there was just like a surgery or something that he had that I'm thinking of. But if you could do either that or Jalen Green and like Tari Eason in picks, I think it'd be hard to, I don't think you could get 3 young guys. The thing is, you got Abaji, Markkanen, and Sexton for Mitchell, though. The thing, you got the picks, and just like in hindsight, I don't know if, you know, you were trading for like Sexton and Markkanen as like, you know, restoration projects versus I think in the Houston thing, you're trading for the upside. So maybe that evens out the pick. You know, I don't think you're going to get 3 young guys for Mitchell. And Abaji was just drafted as well that year too. So that's like a kind of pseudo trading a first round pick. But I would have, if you're asking if I'm, you know, if I'm in my gut at this point, I do think Houston would be my number 1 team, because like I was saying, I think the LeBron Dan Gilbert thing, they're not making a deal. I think Miami just doesn't have, unless Hawkins is on the table, they don't have enough. And I don't even know if they have the picks and the other stuff. There was another Miami trade that I was workshopping, but like I said, we can do full trade machine some other time. But the one other trade I wanted to mention was because we mentioned this Friday, I'll mention this again. And we mentioned this trade for Jimmy Butler, but it was the Grizzlies trading Desmond Bane and, you know, picks, young guy, whatever, for Jimmy Butler. So I don't know, like a Bane for Mitchell type deal. And I don't know, let's see, Donovan Mitchell, Grizzlies. Maybe there's some initial rumors, but if you, I mean, you know, we have a lot of GG Jackson stock on this pod. That's a number 1 make you stutter name in the league, GG Jackson. But if you could get Bane and GG Jackson for Donovan Mitchell, that's kind of a good deal. I don't know. I really have to think about it. If I'm Cleveland for building around Darius Garland, it doesn't seem like, outside of the Memphis blogs, it doesn't seem like there's any. Memphis blogs have, you know, they're cooking up their own fake trades, but it doesn't seem like there's any reports. There's no Shams tweet or Woj tweet about Donovan Mitchell to the Grizzlies rumors, at least not yet. But I did like that trade for Jimmy Butler. And you know, Donovan Mitchell's even a little bit younger, and, you know, the scoring upside, you know, just points wise, is going to give you a little bit more than Jimmy Butler. So maybe the Butler thing, if you're trying to, you know, if you're actually trying to win the title, that is, you know, if we are actually trying to win the title, but that is a real conversation, because Butler is a real playoff guy. He's been to the finals twice. And if Ja is going to be your number 1 guy on that team, and now Butler's in your number 2 role, and he is a type of star player where he's always been willing, if a guy's got the hot, you know, he'll be willing to morph into whatever kind of role he needs to play for the game, for his team to be able to win. So If he needs to morph into a number 2 behind Ja, he'll probably be able to do it behind him a little bit better than Mitchell. It's a close call, at least for like the next, 2 or 3 years before Jimmy Butler and ever. The amount of time before Donovan Mitchell takes off to Brazil is definitely longer than the amount of time that Jimmy Butler takes off to Brazil. So that alone is another reason why you might want to trade for Mitchell. But again, I think Jimmy Butler's definitely proved his worth in the playoffs. So they are running the hype piece for Pacers Celtics. I'm pretty excited. I gotta say, I'm pretty excited. I know that just sounds like I'm trying to talk myself into it, but I like watching Halliburton. I like watching the Pacers as well too. We were in the blackout zone for the Pacers all year. And if you were listening to last week's Tuesday pod, unfortunately, we are in the blackout zone for the Chicago Sky as well too in the WNBA. So I don't know if we're going to end up scooping up the WNBA League Pass. But the thing is, you also get the replays as well too. So you could go, skim through the games. I've been trying to keep up on the highlights. I'm trying to commit to the WNBA. I'm serious, people. I'm trying to watch the WNBA. I'm not messing around. We're watching the film. We're in the dark watching the tape. We're doing the work. Asia Wilson, Kelsey Plum. We're following them on Instagram. We're doing everything we can to try to support the WNBA, but we're liking the pictures of the Skims collabs. We're doing what we can for supporting our female basketball league. But the blackout thing is brutal because it was a brutal year for the network blackouts, the TV blackouts, blackout restrictions for League Pass this year for the NBA because we were in the Midwest, at least where we're at in the Midwest, we were blacked out for Pacers games, Timberwolves games, and Chicago games. So Chicago this season, that's we'll live with it. But to miss Anthony Edwards for the regular season games live, where you have to wait for the replays on League Pass, and then same with Halliburton as well too, because the Pacers are just constantly one of the most fun teams to watch this year, putting up all the points. I wish we could trade our League Pass blackout, because I can watch Pistons games in Bucks games, and we're closer to Milwaukee than we are to Indianapolis. So, and not that I would trade Milwaukee for Indianapolis, but could I trade the Pacers for the Pistons? Or I guess I would have done the Timberwolves. You got to watch Anthony Edwards, and they were, a team that was closer to competing, and obviously now they might actually win the finals. But could I trade the Timberwolves blackout restrictions for the Pistons blackout restrictions? Because you're still restricting me from one regional. And I guess it's got to be in conjunction with probably the regional networks that, obviously that are available in the cable package through my area. But, it's brutal to miss these games live when you don't get, because the thing is, people in my generation, and I think YouTube TV is pretty good about having all that regional stuff on it actually, but I guess Sling TV, get the regional stuff on the thing. Or maybe I'm calling myself out for not getting the package, the high enough level to get the regional sports networks on it. But I do think, it's different than just the old standard 400, 7,000 channels. You get all the, it's all all the traditional networky type stuffs. Now the streaming stuff is, Johnny Carson TV, and you got a whole channel just running all. I mean, you got the movie channel in it, but the streaming channels on the internet cables are a little different than the network stuff. Maybe I need to look into my package. Pause. a little bit better, but we're still on the fence about the WNBA League Pass. We'll need to make up our minds soon because the season is definitely shorter. Maybe they'll run a promotion at some point, try to get the numbers up. But tonight was the first night where there wasn't any games on Ion, because they've been running games on Ion as well too. There wasn't any Ion games or ESPN games or NBA TV games or anything like that. So kind of missing the WNBA League Pass action tonight. We got Wings Dream closing in on halftime. See if we can get an update. Rain Howard, 8 points, 3 for 5 from the field. Tina Charles 6 points, 7 rebounds, 2 for 6. The Wings up 44-36. Our girl, I'm going to butcher the first name, Arike Ogunbowale, 16 points, 7 and 9 from the field in the first half. We got a lot of stocks. So shout out. We're going to go check out this Pacers Celtics game. I might still have time to put a parlay down. They keep saying it's about to start. And it hasn't quite started yet. But we'll be back this weekend with Sam. Like I said, with the potential surprise guest as well, too. But thank you guys for checking us out. Follow the socials if you guys are interested. It's Rem and Sam podcast across all platforms. Give us 5 stars if you're on Spotify or Apple. That would be super clutch, and we would really appreciate it. But thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back next weekend. Or not next weekend, this weekend. We will be on schedule. Same bad time, same bad channel. Have a good night, guys.